and they can watch it on their own time. So, all right. Well, again, welcome. Great to have you checking this trip out. I'm going to just give you an overview of the trip, walk through some of the details, and then field your questions. If you do have a question that you want to share, just since we've got such a small group, just raise your hand or butt in and just ask for clarifying. So I'm guessing about 45 minutes to walk through this. We'll see how it goes. Okay. So my first trip to Tanzania was in 2017. And at that time, we were visiting a medical missionary that our church supports. But we had planned the trip to go and visit the missionary. And then shortly after the plans were underway, our daughter Kyla decided that she was going to go and work for a nonprofit in the city of Moshi, town of Moshi, which is at the foothills of Kilimanjaro. So it was like, okay, we'll spend some time and hang out with our daughter in Africa. So we stayed at a bed and breakfast right at the base of Mount Kilimanjaro. So this was our breakfast table and our supper table. Every morning and every evening, we would look up at the mountain. So this was 2017, and I was like, I think we have to come back and hike this. And my daughter was up for that. We went to one of the Kilimanjaro trailheads. We had a quick look. That just gave us a little more interest. We're like, we really should think about doing this. So that's what got the trip going in my mind, was looking at this mountain for a week. And so then in 2019, we had a group that went and hiked the mountain. This was one of my favorite views. And my daughter, who was, an expat, hanging out with other expats in East Africa, there's a little pub built into this old railway station. So to have a beer in the evening, in the cool of the evening, you grab your plastic chair and your beer from the pub, and then you literally go and sit in the middle of the railroad tracks on your plastic chair, and you enjoy the mountain view. So again, you're looking at the mountain no matter where you're at. So a quick overview of the itinerary. Those of us who are in the Midwest, there are a couple Australians who are thinking about joining. They haven't committed yet, but for us in the Midwest, there's a direct flight to Amsterdam with Delta, which is the most convenient way to get there, about 8 hours, and then get a connecting flight down to Kilimanjaro. JRO is the airport abbreviation, and that airport is out in the middle of nowhere, but again, that's about an 8-hour flight. When we went into 2019, we had a little bit of sketchy weather as we were getting ready to leave. We had to do the whole de-icing thing, not once, but twice before leaving. And we had a very close connection, but we made it in time and got there. Once you arrive there at the Kilimanjaro airport, you're in Africa. This is African airport by any imagination. I'm walking onto the tarmac, and the cultural shock begins to set in. There are no nice, neat lines when you go through immigration. It's kind of chaotic, and it's like, welcome to Africa. This is just the way it is. And that just a rude awakening. But it's about 9 o'clock at night when you get there, which is a little unsettling to arrive in the dark. In 2019, we went straight from the airport to our tents in the village, and that was really unsettling for some people, to arrive in the dark, to arrive at your tent in the dark, and you could see some glowing eyes in the trees, which were monkeys in the trees and things, and it was just strange. So we're going to ease you in a little bit better. We're going to do one night at the River Lodge, the Wera Wera River Lodge first up. And then we'll go to our tent accommodation. So the company that we've worked with, so I've worked with them twice before, is Brenda and Kakasi Camaro. Brenda is originally from Nebraska, and she's spent some time out in Baltimore as well. And she was working with a nonprofit group in Tanzania and went on safari. She met Kakasi, and she thought, this is a pretty nice guy. So she decided to marry, and now she's living in Arusha, Tanzania, and they have twins, Max and Allie. You see, they're a little bit older than this photo. So Brenda is excellent with the logistics. Really appreciated working with her. Kakasi is the most friendly and outgoing guy that you can imagine. You can see his big smile. He is very hospitable, and he is a great guy. I believe his birth name was actually Cuthbert, but he had a bit of a speech impediment as he was learning to talk, and he kept on tripping on the letters and of the word. So it came out as Kakasi. So Kakasi is how everybody knows him, and that's just who he is. But a great guy. This is my daughter Kyla, who was on the 2019 trip, who was there in 2017 as well, with our mountain guide Festo. And so I've spent a week on the mountain with Festo and had a very positive experience with him. I trust his leadership. Once we're on the mountain, he is the leader. I'm the facilitator in helping us get there and get back, and I'll be negotiating any group dynamics and things that need to be dealt with. But Festo is the guide. He is the lead guide, and he is the guy who will be getting us safely up and down the mountain. Yeah. So I chatted with him about 2 weeks ago for a 20-minute conversation. So this is the lodge we'll spend our first night in. Very nice. It's Tanzanian owned. Just a great place to be looking forward to arriving at on our first night, but also looking forward once we come down the mountain to come back and enjoy the lodge. So on Friday, we head out from the lodge and we go to the Kamaro's farm. What they call their farm is the Shamba, is the Swahili name for that. And it's not very far from where we're lodged, probably 15, 20 minutes. We'll be bussed over, and you can see the pictures of tents and gear laid out, and we'll be checking and double checking everything. We'll be sitting under the mango tree for our meals and experiencing Tanzanian hospitality from the get-go. They've got very simple accommodation, with the tenting. There's no lavish fancy toilets. There was one flush toilet. There was no shower. So you're already kind of starting to move into camping mode as you head out to the Shamba. More than likely, we'll get a little tour of the farm, taking a look at the tropical fruit. He's got bananas and all kinds of things growing on his property. He's got a couple cows and chicken, and but we'll be eating our meals out there and enjoying life in the middle of the village. It's amazing that there are thousands of people spread across the foothills of the mountain living in these village communities. So there are a lot of people in the neighborhood. Being white people camping out at this farm, there will be locals who will just kind of walk by and look at us with great curiosity. And if you ever hear the word Mzungu, it's simply the Swahili name for white person. So we are an oddity in their environment, but it's part of the cultural experience. From their farm, assuming that the banana trees haven't grown too big, you can actually see the top of Mount Kilimanjaro, just to give you a sense of the location. That's, zoomed in, you can kind of see the edge of the mountain right up through there. Right through the trees. So you're in the neighborhood when you can see the mountain from where you're camping. All right, going to walk through the 8-day route. The Lemosho route is what it's commonly called, just to give you a sense of what this trip entails. So on Saturday, we're going to drive 3 to 4 hours from the Londarasi Gate. The community where we'll be camping at is called Uswa, which is right in this neighborhood. If you can see my mouse, I'm hoping you can see that. So it's about a 3 to 4 hour drive around to the Londarasi Gate. And at that gate, all of our gear gets weighed in. We technically register, we sign in that we are going to begin the climb. And more than likely, assuming we do what we did in 2019, we'll have lunch there as well that they will provide. From there, we drive to the Lemosho Gate and begin the hike. And it's a short drive. I want to say 20 to 30 minutes. My memory is a little fuzzy on that. Everyone's amped up and excited and getting ready for that trip, and it's kind of a bit of a blur. So these are a few photos from the Lemosho trailhead. You can see this long line of men. These are all people who were supporting our group of 22. And in the photo in the top right, there's a scale here, and all of the gear had to be weighed in for each individual porter. So it's a lengthy process of all of these people, one set of scales. Again, this is Africa, so we would, in the United States, would probably think of having 3 or 4 lines and different things, but this is one person supervising one line with one set of scales. So it simply just takes time. So we did have lunch there. They provided a really awesome lunch. And then the 22 of us were loaded into one van, one vehicle, and we headed off to our Lemosho gate, which again was not too far. So that was our 2019 group with our lead guide, Festo, right there in the front. But we had a great mix. And there's Kakasi, who didn't hike with us, but was certainly in the know and journeying with us on the trip. So we head out from the Lemosho gate and we begin in the rainforest, basically. Very tropical, very green, quite warm. Good spot to start looking for monkeys in the trees. As we head up to the first camp, the English description of the first camp is Big Tree Camp. I'm not good at pronouncing the Swahili, Miti Makubwa or something like that camp for the first night. This is the least scenic of the campsites because we're surrounded in the trees. You can't see the mountain from the site. But yeah, we won't be the only group there. I'm sure there'll be several other groups. And this was the most compacted campsite as we were surrounded by these trees and just lots and lots of different people from different groups right there in that one campsite. From there, we really begin the daily rhythm of life hiking on the mountain. So roughly 6:30 waking up, 7:30 breakfast, 8 to 8:30 start hiking, lunch either at camp or on the trail, depending on the day. And it's not a fast walk. It's not fast hiking at all. Right from the gate, they will be using the Swahili phrase pole pole, which means slowly, slowly. They want to keep us walking at a very slow pace so that we don't walk too hard and too fast and burn ourselves out. There are more and more stories of young adult men who want to run up the mountain and just look macho and strong and tough, and they burn out, they get altitude sickness, and then they have to come off the mountain. The 8-day route is the one that is most suggested for those who want to have time to acclimate. And that's why I did it in 2019, and that's why it's the only way that I would choose to do it, because of the time on the mountain. The porters will have our tents set up and our gear set up when we arrive at our campsite. And then some days we'll hike high and we'll camp low. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into a couple of those days. So day 2, Sunday, from the Big Tree Camp, the Miti Makubwa, to Shira 1. So you can see where that is. Approximately 5 miles-ish, 8,700 feet to 11,500-ish. So already, there's a beginning of a significant climb. Shira 1 and Shira 2 are on a large plateau. And you'll see that in the next couple photos. So once you kind of get to this altitude, for the first couple of days, there's not a lot of significant climbing, but we do spend time at elevation. So this is coming up to the Shira 1 camp. So we're getting out of the rainforest terrain. You can see the terrain is the trees are becoming much shorter and stunted, and trees that only are supported at a higher altitude. Stopping for a break, we aren't in a rush, we're not in a hurry. There'll be adequate water for us to drink along the way that we will carry with us. So this is the Shira 1 camp. So this was our group, all of our tents huddled around this is the dining tent. I'll talk more about that in a little bit, but all 22 of us, plus our lead guide and a few assistant guides, could fit in there and eat. So it was a real communal gathering. This was the kitchen tent that would be traveling up and down the mountain. So the cooks would prepare meals in that. There are some outhouses on site, which we generally didn't use. And I'm going to talk more about the porta potties that we'll have traveling with us in a little bit. On day 3, we go from the Shira 1 camp to the Shira 2. Generally, again, this is kind of a plateau, but we're going to go up to an elevation a little bit higher as we go via Cathedral Point. And it's a beautiful place to stop, but also the mentality here is to hike high and camp low. And as frequently as we can do that on the mountain, it is better for acclimating. When we get to altitude, our bodies realize that there's not enough oxygen to go around. So the body automatically says, I need more red blood cells to carry the oxygen so that I can do well at altitude. So when we push ourselves to a higher altitude, the body is just saying, oh, we got to create some more red blood cells. Coming down, we recover, the blood cells increase. So then there is more opportunity for oxygen to hang on to those red blood cells and give us a chance to do well on the mountain. So again, hiking high, camping low. We don't have to go up to Cathedral Point, but for the benefit of acclimating, it's wise for us to do that. So this is some of the terrain from Shira 1 to Shira 2. This is at Cathedral Point, which you can see is at 12,703 feet. And we don't have full packs on here. We actually dropped them at the bottom. Actually, we did have a pack on here. We didn't have to, the porters didn't come up here with everything. It was just a very simple side trip, if you want to put it that way. And they provided lunch for us, like a picnic lunch, which was really kind of a cool thing, but it was all part of their great hospitality. This was arriving at Shira 2. You can still see the sense of the plateau, very wide and open, but very obviously you can see the mountain and you just love to see it. So is that a question from someone or?
No.
Okay. So that's Shira 1 to Shira 2. Then we go from Shira 2, which is at about 12.6 to Barranco, and we're going to go via Lava Tower at 15.2. Again, same mentality, hike high, camp low, for the benefit of acclimating. About 6.5 miles. Getting closer to the mountain, you start to go underneath it and around it. We kind of see it from all angles from the south side. And this is going up to Lava Tower at 15,200 feet. And you can see they rushed ahead of us and they set up our kitchen tent. They set up the kitchen tent for cooking. The meal tent was there, and we had a sit-down warm lunch at 15,000 feet, and then we continued on the hike from there. On this portion of the trip, we did have a few snowflakes, a little bit of precipitation, but otherwise it was generally very clear. One of the interesting things to watch for as we go between these two camps is these giant ground cells, which are very unique trees to this altitude, and only grow in a very few places on the planet, and they call them prehistoric trees. They're just fascinating to see. So when you see them, you'll be like, oh, there they are. They're just fascinating. And we drop down into the Barranco camp. This is one of my favorite campsites, and you can see us all just kind of coming down. Our campsite was off here to the left-hand side. You can see our meal tent and the kitchen tent. There are a couple buildings here. One is the public potties, which again, we won't be using if we don't have to. And there is like an emergency shelter there, but you get a sense that there are a number of other people on the mountain. One person in our crew in 2019 was designated to run ahead to the next campsite, to draw a big circle on the ground and say, this is where Tanzania Choice Safaris is going to put their tent. That was his job as a runner, was physically running to the next campsite to claim a spot. Just a very creative way of organizing camp hospitality. So at the Barranco camp, and you can get a sense again how close we are to the mountain, just sitting right underneath it. Tents And down here in the lower right-hand corner, these are toilet tents is what they are. They are porta potties that are carried by people in our group for only us to use. And so it just saves having to deal with any particular messiness that might be in the public restroom. You'll hear talk about the Barranco Wall, but I don't want you to get spooked out and freaked out about it. So at the Barranco camp, and as we come in here, and you'll see off to your right, this big hill. And yes, we do have to exit up that hill. So it's called the Barranco Wall. This is just a couple other pictures of being at Barranco camp. And so we spent the night at that camp, and then it's only 3 miles up and over as we head over to Caranga camp. And you can see the altitude. Not a lot of altitude change. There are a few ups and downs along the way. This is the Barranco Wall. And if you look closely on this picture, you can see very small people snaking their way up this hill. But once you're on the hill, it's not as scary as when you're at the camp looking up at it. There's one spot that they call the Kissing Rock, where you have to basically walk by it so closely that your lips could kiss the rock. And honestly, I was at that, I passed it without even being aware of it being the Kissing Rock. But just to give you a sense of slow and steady, and up we go. And during this climb up here, most of us didn't use our hiking poles, or we had them in our fist as we walked up the mountain. This is looking down at the beginning of going up the Barranco Wall. And it's just this huge trail of humanity, like ants on the hillside, as the porters carry all of the equipment up. So this is pretty much at the top of the Barranco Wall, where we rested for quite some time. The purpose of the bandanas or the buff is because there was a wind blowing with dust in the air, and that was the only reason for wearing those. They look kind of cool, kind of gangster, but it was more just to protect from dust. Because then we get in above the tree line, and it looks like you're walking and feels like you're kind of walking on the moon as we arrive then up at Caranga camp. It's a little surprising when you get to the ridge. It's kind of difficult to see from this photo, but beyond this outhouse is a deep valley. So we come up this way, and then you're standing on one side of the ridge looking over to the other, but it takes you a good hour and a half, because you have to go all the way down in the valley to come back up to the camp. But again, just a beautiful spot to be camping with these beautiful mountain views, as you are just amazed at how close you feel to the mountain, but still knowing you've got a couple of days of hiking before you get to the summit. So from Thursday, we go from Caranga over to Barafu. And there is actually another trail that connects in here. The Machame route comes in and connects. So there might be a few other people that connect onto the trail at this point. A shorter day. And the goal is to get to Barafu fairly early in the afternoon, so that we have opportunity and time to nap and sleep before we get up for summit day. So this is on the way to the Barafu camp, again, way above tree line. Feels like you're kind of walking on the moon. And then we were camping literally above the clouds. And this was our night before going up to the summit. So this is settling in. This was early afternoon. Everyone was sleeping, napping, chilling. At about 10 o'clock, we woke up with all kinds of shouting and screaming and yelling. The wind had picked up significantly. Our dining tent had blown away off the side of the mountain, was way down. I didn't even know how far it was. So that was a surprising event. I was like, oh, okay. But the porters were on it. And fortunately, by 24 hours later, they had put it all back together and found it and found all the contents for what was in there. But it was kind of unsettling to have our dining tent blow away. So day 7, this is summit day. and we go from Barafu. We go by what's called Stella Point, and then we go to the Uhuru Summit. And in 2019, then we backtracked, we paused at Barafu briefly, and then down to the Millennium Camp. And this is most definitely the most challenging physical day of the trip. It's about 3 miles up and 8 miles down. And Barafu again is at about 15.3. So we hike up. And once you get to Stella Point, you're really on the rim of the old volcano. Mount Kilimanjaro is an inactive volcano. And once you get to that point, you're like, oh, the ground is a lot more level and it's relatively easy going from Stella Point around to the summit at 19,341, if that makes sense. But from there, we turn around and we went back to the Millennium Camp. We started hiking at about 2 o'clock in the morning, and most of us got to the Millennium Camp around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's about 24 hours of travel time. 24? No, sorry, it was like 12 hours, 2 a.m. to 2 p.m. Some people really struggle with the downhill and only arrived at the Millennium Camp closer to supper time, like 5 or 6. And that was a real challenge. So that's definitely the most physically demanding day. But again, pole, slow and steady. It's not a race. It's not a rush. And the guides were very good about pacing us, very good about pausing for us to catch our breath, pausing for water breaks. They were also good with a larger group. We were able to split the group up into groups that were able to move faster and groups that needed to move a little bit slower. And that just happened with the guides managing us. It wasn't something that I was like, oh, I need to think about this process. They just simply made it happen. It just seemed seamless. I was just totally blown away about how they did that. So this is getting us up at about 1 a.m. We had a hot drink and a quick snack before starting to head up the mountain. So headlamps and all of our gear on as we were ready to head on up. This is on the trail on the way up. And I've mentioned, I think, in the packing list that camelbacks will freeze up when it gets too cold. And so then having a water bottle is very important. So that's what's happening in this photo, is that stopping for a drink with the camelback must have frozen up already. So sharing a water bottle. Some people strive to be on top of the mountain at sunrise. Our guide was kind of like, you know, wherever you are on the mountain, you are going to see the sunrise. So we didn't leave at midnight. Some groups were leaving at midnight. We left at about 2 a.m. On our way up. So this was sunrise on the way up. Stella Point again at 18,885, right on the edge, on the rim of the top of the mountain. So you can actually kind of look into the crater and you can see that there is certainly snow up there. But the incline mellows out significantly from Stella Point to Uhuru Summit. And you'll be able to look over and see the glacier that's up there on the mountain. It is rapidly declining like glaciers are around the world. And with the drought and with the heat, they say it's been accelerated decline, but it's still there. But when I was talking with Festo again a couple of weeks ago, he said, oh, you'll see the difference. You'll notice the difference. But just fascinating to be up there. Again, we were hiking in about 60-mile-an-hour winds. It was not fun to be hanging out there for a long time. I'm really hoping that we won't have as much wind on our summit day. And of course, pausing at the summit for the photo. So this is at the peak, 19,341 feet. And you can see us all bundled up there. We have our rain gear on, we have parkas, we have all of the equipment on, we have our gaiters on. I'll talk more about those in a little bit. We have a Tanzania Choice Safari, then there were individual group photos and all that kind of thing. But we were only at the summit for maybe 10, 15 minutes at the most. If it wasn't so windy, I think we might have hung around a little bit longer. But once we were up there, we're like, we got to start heading down, knowing that it's going to be a challenging climb. This is very unique terrain. I don't think I've really hiked any distance on this. It's loose volcanic rock called scoria. So imagine kind of walking, it kind of felt taking a step into quicksand. Going up, you would take a step and your foot would slide back a few inches, and take a step and then slide. Coming down, it was really easier on the knees because you'd take a step and you would slide with the volcanic rock with the scoria and slide. And that is the main reason why gaiters are recommended, to keep the rocks out of your boots. And I rented, and most people rented those, and I highly recommend those. But pausing to stop on the way down, you can get a sense of the incline on the mountain there. Just enjoying the sun and resting up as we were heading down. So this is beyond Barafu, and heading down, one of the assistant guides just led a small group of us at this point. We kind of broke up into speed-based groups at this point, based on our guides just being attentive to our needs. And this is camping at the Millennium Camp. But again, it's about a 7,000-foot drop from Uhuru Peak down to the Millennium Camp, which is the most physically challenging after going up most of the time for the first 5-6 days. To have this consistent down really demands good leg work and good preparation by hiking up and down mountains and hills, any hills that we can find. So Millennium Camp again, and assuming if we do this exact same route, I mean, there's also an option of camping at the Mawika Camp, which is down a little bit further, but that's another, 6,000-7,000 feet further down the mountain. So I'm guessing more than likely that we'll be at Millennium. It's going to depend on Festo's judgment and Festo's call as we head on down, but about 6 miles from there. So this is the group at the Millennium Camp with a lot of the porters and guides. This is when we had our formal tip ceremony. That it's a really, they strive to make it a transparent system. We'll gather the tip money within our group, and then a couple of us will divide it up based on the numbers of porters and guides and cooks and all of that. And then it's put into individual envelopes for the porters, for the guides, for the cooks, and presented publicly at that point. And they want that to be transparent so that everyone is aware the money in this envelope is to be spread equally amongst the people who are receiving it. And it's kind of a real ritual and tradition on the mountain. And arriving at the Mawika Gate at the end of the climb, nice little sign that says, "Congratulations, bon voyage." And we are down. There is a place to sign out, to sign another book to say that you've completed the climb. And you will be receiving a certificate saying that you have climbed based on that signing in, signing out process. And they happen to sell beer at the gate, which a number of us enjoyed a little beverage after not having that for a few days. So that was kind of nice. But looking forward to heading them back to the lodge, showers, cleaning up. It's about an hour drive roughly from the Mawika Gate back to the Wero River Lodge. So that's kind of the trip in a nutshell. So on the Saturday, we hike out, we overnight at the Wero River Lodge. My wife and a group of friends are going to be flying in on that Saturday night, and we're going to be spending a couple days in the village, visiting in Arusha, visiting the doctor that we have supported, and then we're going to go on safari for a few days. On that Sunday, it's going to be Sunday. I'm going to go and worship at a local church. That's totally optional if you want to experience that. We may do some quilt distribution. The women here at our church make these beautiful handmade quilts, and typically they donate them to Lutheran World Relief. That gets them to places like this in Tanzania. We are going to have that opportunity to do that. Hopefully, but we can make that arrangement with the local pastor. And this is when any optional extensions would begin on that Sunday. Or if you are going to jump on the flight back to Minneapolis, You would go, would get a ride back to the airport, Kilimanjaro. The flight, unfortunately, stops at Dar es Salaam, which is only about an hour away on the coast. It's the capital of Tanzania, but it's on the tarmac for an hour. You don't get off, and then you go back to Amsterdam. It's just the route that Delta does, KLM does from Amsterdam, Kilimanjaro, stopping at Dar es Salaam just to load up people and drop a few people off, then head back to Amsterdam. So anyone who's returning would be back in Minneapolis by the 19th, that Monday. So that's kind of the trip in an overview. I'm going to get into some of the nitty gritty on gear and some of those kind of things. Wise words from Festo: don't focus on the entire mountain. Take it one step at a time, because every single step gets you there. And that's just the truth of it. That don't be overwhelmed by saying 19,341 feet. It's every single step that's going to get you there. So the equipment, you need a day pack. I have one here that I used on my last trip, and it's nothing fancy, 25 to 30 liters. The only point that it's going to be really full is when you are leaving the summit and heading down, because you're going to start peeling off layers. We may have an opportunity to put some of the layers in with our gear at the Barafu camp where we start, but it just kind of adds on up. But Camelback is strongly recommended. I may go a little bit bigger. I got another pack. I was going to do another trip a tad size bigger, but again, something in that range. It's really wise to use you can use your day pack as your flight carry-on bag, with the essentials that you would have for the trip. Your medications for sure. Everyone in our group, we wore our hiking boots on the flight, and that was just in the event that our luggage didn't make it. Of our 22 people, we had one person in our group who had to wait 24 hours for the next flight to come in the next night for her bag to arrive. But 21 out of 22 wasn't bad, but just know that, it was like, okay, I'm going to have my day pack. I'm going to have my hiking poles. I'm going to have my boots. I'm going to have my meds and the core essentials, and the rest that I could borrow and beg for if I absolutely really needed. Water bottle, I use, an Nalgene 32 ounce, but that's just really good if you want to mix in some electrolyte mix of vitamin C or something like that, so you're not putting it all into your Camelback. But again, on summit night, this is not going to freeze up. Chances are it's not going to freeze up where a Camelback hose would. Carrying rain gear, an extra warm layer, camera, if you use your phone, personal items, a rain cover in the event of rain or hopefully not snow. The packing list that you would have had a look at, you've probably seen, is pretty ordinary for any general hiking trip. Hat with visor for the sun, warm hat with fleece or wool, balaclava. I had and this is a fleece balaclava that I used, was really wonderful. You can wear a hat underneath it and pull it over the top. But that was really great. Bandanas, you saw a couple people in the photos, you can use them to protect you from the sun or protect you from dust. Footwear, good hiking boots. If you don't have good hiking boots yet, go and get them, break them in, wear them in, talk to the salesperson, and make sure you get a really good fit. A pair of tennis shoes or sturdy sandals. I would recommend tennis shoes. It's rocky terrain wherever you go on the mountain. Sandals, you're going to have to wear socks anyway. So I would recommend tennis shoes, but hiking socks, sock liners. For some people, sock liners are the bomb. To wear a polypropylene liner inside your smart wool sock or whatever, so you have two layers. For some people, they say that just reduces friction by having the sock and the liner rub against each other rather than have the boot and sock create blisters. For some people, it works excellently. I'm not a really big sock liner fan, but for some people, it's a must. So just kind of figure that out for yourself. Leg gaiters, again, those are the piece that straps onto your leg from knee down to your boot to keep the rocks out. I'm going to rent them again because I don't have any. Never had the need to purchase any or use any for hiking and the hiking that I do in Wyoming or Minnesota. General clothing, short sleeve shirts, long pants, zip off style is nice if you can and have those. Shorts, undies, bra, down jacket or parka. I did say on the website just to be careful with the rating of the jacket. Just because it says it's an 800 fill or a 700 fill, don't assume that it is going to be the warmest jacket that is going to be good for you. The number refers to the quality of the down, but it doesn't tell you how much down is in there, and it doesn't tell you how it's organized and packaged into the jacket itself. So you can compare two 800 level jackets and they could be very different in warmth. So this is actually the one that I did use on Kilimanjaro and it worked for me. I'm not going to use it again. You probably can't see, but I've got some, I've had a lot of losing of some of the down has just been leaking out over the years and it's not as good as what it used to be. So I have a Rab jacket that I'm going to use, which this one can keep me warm. And I know I walk Minnesota winters, it can be 20 below, and this baby is going to keep me toasty and warm. So I looked around for a nice sale. You can also rent a parka if you want, so you don't have to, you can save some money that way as well. What else is on the list? A waterproof shell. I have a Gore-Tex jacket that I just love. Waterproof pants in the event of rain or snow. Actually, and on Summit Day, we use those waterproof pants as an exterior shell to cut the wind more than anything. Fleece jacket, a wool sweater, long undies, fleece pants, mittens with liner glove. So again, Summit Day, mittens are really strongly encouraged because it's going to be very, very cold. And a liner, I didn't bring them with me, is just a very light glove to have on underneath. So if you do need to take off your mitten at any point, you will have a glove still with a liner on it, keeping your hand semi-warm. If you're going to take a photo or if you're going to get water, if you're going to stop to go to the bathroom, whatever, that your hand is still protected from the cold. And then a regular pair of gloves. Us in Minnesota, we know warm clothing, gloves, and all that kind of stuff. But layering is the way to go to keep you warm and to peel off layers as you get warmer and shove them in your pack if you don't need them. Sleeping gear, sleeping bag rated to -10. A -10 sleeping bag is very expensive. I'm going to rent. I rented last time and I'm going to rent again. I have no need to have a -10 bag. I'm not a winter camper, but it's really good to have a decent bag. A sleeping bag liner. I'm not a big liner fan for sleeping bags. I like my feet to have air. And this may be a very personal preference. If you get really, really cold feet and you just have to snuggle in under the blankets, then a closed liner might feel really good to you. I took a liner with me and I hated it and I will not use it ever again. But again, personal preference. The suggestion of the liner comes from the rental company. They clean the rental bags in between, which is really nice. But there's just for one extra layer of cleanliness that you could have your own liner so that you're like, oh, I'm not sleeping in someone else's bag. But again, personal preference with that. Camelback style for easy drinking, 2 to 3 liters. You certainly wouldn't need any more than that. 1 water bottle, LED headlamp or flashlight, headlamp for sure. They're just convenient when you're digging through your pack at night, when you're hiking. If you had an additional little flashlight, it'd be bonus, but there's no reason for it. Camera, memory disk, plenty of batteries, depending on how you charge your devices. You can see at the bottom of the list on the left-hand side, I say a solar panel or charger. I have a little solar panel that I'll be taking with me just to do some charging. If you have access to that, or battery packs is helpful. Trekking poles, again, if you don't want to lug those all the way to Africa, you can rent them. They do pack pretty easily into a suitcase or a duffel. Sunglasses, just being at altitude, you want to protect your eyes. High energy snacks. if you have a go-to snack that you're like, when I need a little burst of energy, this is the snack that I go for. For some people, it's like an M&M and cashew mix or whatever. I like licorice all sorts. Growing up in Australia and New Zealand, I just love the sweet and the licorice. And it was like, I've already decided that's what I'm going to take for my high energy snack. But I'll probably pack some trail mix as well, and a few, protein bars, something like that, Snickers or just a little bit of a food supply for trail snacking. It won't be for meals. They'll provide the meal, but for in between the meals, just to give you a little boost. Some people like to journal and pen, just write down how they're feeling about the trip, what's going on. If you need some entertainment at the evening, most people were content pretty much when it started to get dark and it gets cold. They're like, I'm going to bed and try and sleep as best as I can. But if you want to hang out in the evening, you might want to bring a little bit for evening entertainment. A prop for a summit photo. You saw the Tanzania Choice Safari signage, but if you had some other kind of banner or flag or some other sentimental value item, you could certainly do that. Solar panel. Then all kind of general personal toiletry items. I'm not going to talk through that. They're all on the list and pretty self-explanatory. This is a list of things that you can rent if you so choose to do that, or with a sleeping bag. I am going to rent one of those. Leg gaiters, I am definitely going to rent those. I'm probably going to bring my trekking poles with me. I have waterproof pants. I have a waterproof jacket. I have a down jacket and parka. I've got gloves, won't need that. They provide an air mattress, but as we get closer to the trip, those options will be available if you wanted to sign up for any of those. So what to put your stuff in. Your stuff is carried by the porters, which is really good. So I'm going to have a duffel, which I took last time and worked really well for me. You don't have to have the system. So I'm going to pack this into my suitcase and it unfolds to a 100-liter duffel bag. And this will be what I'm going to use on the mountain for all of my personal gear. So in this, I'll have everything that I'm not wearing is going to be in this duffel bag. And then in the morning when I'm packing up, I'm just going to throw everything in here. And then the porters are going to load it up and carry it and pack it up the mountain. I don't ever recall seeing my bag carried by a person, because they wrap it in tarps and all kinds of stuff. As you can see, the guys on the trail, it's just amazing. And I was never worried about it getting wet or getting damp. I will have personal stuff in plastic bags inside this just to be super, super safe. But a duffel really worked well for me. You can see a couple in this picture, a couple of the porters have backpacks. So if you have a traditional backpack, that is something that you can use for your stuff on the mountain. The porters may choose to carry it on their back. They may choose to wrap it in something else, but just kind of think through that. You can see that there's a limit, 15 kilograms, about 33 pounds. So they are really urging us, Tanzania Choice Safaris, is saying, don't overpack. We were worried that they were going to have us weighed in and have our bags all weighed in at the shamba, at the camp, but they never did. I'm not saying that you should not pack lightly, but don't be paranoid about if you're close to the weight, just hope that it should be good enough. Denise, you got a question?
Yeah, what do you do? I mean, when you get there, if we have a bigger bag and then we pull out the duffel, is there a place to leave your bag until we get back?
Yes, definitely. They'll have a spot at the shamba where it can be locked away and then accessible as soon as we get back. It'll be at the hotel. So yes, definitely.
Is that what, do most people do that? Bring a separate bag then with the duffel within the bigger suitcase? Is that what most people do?
Some people would have a backpack and then that would just be their carry bag, but then they would have stuff in another bag that doesn't go up the mountain. So they're nice, clean clothes that they're planning to use for the flight home would be available. Probably stuff that you wore maybe some of the stuff that you were wearing on the flight. Actually, I'm going to be wearing a pair of hiking pants in the event that my bag gets lost. I'm going to be wearing my favorite fleece on the flight. But yeah, there needs to be something else to put your stuff in that's not going to go up the mountain. That can stay.
Okay, thank you.
Good clarification. Yeah. Their hospitality is phenomenal. Usually we'll get beverages at our tent in the morning before even getting out of bed, which is just phenomenal that someone would do that for you. And it can be a tea or a coffee or a hot chocolate. The food was really impressive, and there was more than enough that was available all the time. If they are running low on some portion of food, someone they'll call down to the bottom of the mountain and someone will hike supplies in to replenish what's needed, which just blew my mind that they would do that for us. There's a real sense of community on the mountain, just being in the group. And again, we had this group of 22, so it was ebbing and flowing and mixing with the people that we were hanging out with, but just a great sense of community. It's people who love adventure and love the outdoors, and it was just a great sense of community and being together. And so, yeah, it's just something to look forward to. So the latrines I mentioned, kind of referenced these a couple times. We'll pay a little bit extra to have at least one porta potty, maybe two. The public ones are just a little sketchy and you just never quite know what they're going to be like. So we'll have a private toilet tent, which it's just amazing to me that that's their job, to tend to this thing, to empty it out, to keep it clean, that is their job. I'm really grateful that people actually do that. But it's a nice thing for us to access. Vaccinations, medications, be up to date, recommending with COVID to get your typhoid vaccination if you haven't had that or if you're not up to date on that. Cipro is just an antibiotic primarily for any digestive upsets. It's something that we typically travel with whenever we're headed to a developing country. Talk to if you go to a travel clinic or your local GP and just say, hey, I'm going to Tanzania. I would love to get a prescription of Cipro, please. And they're usually very agreeable to that. I'm going to quiz Brenda as we get a little bit closer on antimalarials. Technically, the CDC here in the US would say that there's malaria in the area. I'm sorry, I'll just back up a little bit. Most of our group started taking antimalarials before leaving, as you would do for the malarial meds to kick in upon arrival. Most of us stopped taking them within a couple of days because very soon we were above tree line and there wasn't a mosquito in sight. But I'm going to quiz Brenda on that a little bit more and leave that to you once we hear directly from Brenda. What's their current recommendation? East Africa has been very dry. They've been going through a drought, which means there are even less mosquitoes. So connecting with your family physician or travel clinic is important with that. You may or not be familiar with Diamox. The official name is acetazolamide. And it's a med that can help decrease headache, tiredness, nausea, dizziness, and shortness of breath that can occur when you climb to high altitudes. That's WebMD's description. It's a diuretic, increasing heart and breathing rates, increasing the amount of alkali excreted in the urine, making the blood more acidic. Acidifying the blood drives the ventilation, which is the cornerstone of acclimatization. It's a personal choice. Talk to your doctor. I took Diamox last time and I will take it again this time. You typically end up peeing more, but I think for me, it was worth the investment, that if I can do this to make sure that's going to help me, give me the best possible chance of summiting, then I'm going to take it. But again, talk to your doctor about that. Oxygen will be available in the event of emergencies. None of the people in our group ever use that. Fingertip oximeters, just to check your oxygen blood level, will be available. I never used one, and I don't think anyone in our group actually even used one on the mountain, but it gives you a sense of just awareness of where you may be at in regard to oxygen or lack of oxygen. Staying hydrated is very important. We'll be stressing that all the way up and all the way down. One little tidbit is if you're hiking with a friend, have the discussion before you leave. What happens if your hiking buddy has to come off the mountain because they can't handle the altitude, they're not feeling well? Are you both going to come down or not? We don't want you to have that arguing and debate on the mountain. We'd rather that you think about it before leaving. The physical preparation. Practice hiking on hills is critical for strength, for up the hills and down the hills, increasing the length of hiking 3 to 8 hours. As we can be spending, 6 to 8 hours, and especially summit day, it's going to be a lot of time on our feet. Increasing the weight in our pack up to 25 pounds here in the US. Not that we're going to be carrying that much when we're there, but it's just going to help you feel more comfortable and able to be on the mountain with 10 to 12 pounds at the most, with your water, with your day pack, with snacks and that kind of stuff. Any other cardio exercise is going to be helpful. I'm a Stairmaster guy and do elliptical. I find that helpful. Core and quads for rapid descent. If you can add some quad exercises in, I would encourage you to think about that. And just to get used to wearing your equipment so that it is something that feels just a part of you. Yeah, Becca, what's your question?
So I was actually going to say, I was at Walmart a couple weeks ago, and they actually sell masks to practice hiking, to practice with the change in altitude as well.
Yeah.
I don't know if do you recommend that at all, or?
One of the guys in our group had one of those, and he was just an avid athlete, and he tried it, and they said it was really strange to get used to because it just literally restricts the amount of oxygen that you can get in while you're working out. I don't know if I'd feel a little claustrophobic. I didn't do that. He chose to do that. He summited fine. The guy was so fit anyway, it was obscene. I don't think he had to worry about it. Some of us in the 2019 group went to a gym called the Powerhouse and kind of did some cross-training stuff. If that's something you'd like to add, I mean, I did that with a group of like 5 or 6 other people. It was some kettlebells, and we were dragging sleds, and we were doing burpees at times. And there's a whole regimen that you can choose to do. Based on my experience of being in the mountain in 2019, I don't think it's 100% necessary to do all of that gym work. If you're a regular walker, if you're regularly exercising, but being on hills and hiking is the best way for you to get your body in shape and ready for it. But cardio is going to help you any which way, just to help breathe in the thinner air. Yeah, any other questions on the physical prep?
Do you need to work out on higher elevations before you go? Like, you need to go, practice at 8 to 10,000 or anything like that?
I mean, if you could, it would be great, but it's not going to help you essentially because you're going to sit on an airplane and then be at the base camp, which is like 3,000 feet. So any red blood cells that you would have developed at 10,000 feet here in Wyoming or Colorado, and actually in January, it's pretty tough to do that based on it being the middle of winter, is pretty tough. So, all of us, all 22 of us were from the Midwest. Last time we were all coming from 900 feet elevation here in Minneapolis, and 21 of us made it to Uhuru Summit. And then the other person just got to Stella Point and said, I'm done. This is close enough. And so none of us did mountain training in advance of that. So I would say it's not essential. If you can focus on the basics of walking and cardio, that's really going to help you.
Thank you.
Okay. Meals, just to give you a sense, I referred to their hospitality and variety, just kind of throw up there. It's not a good use of words when you're talking about meals, just throw that up there. Tea, coffee, oats, porridge, fruit, toast, omelet, sausage, fruit, chicken sandwich, soup, tea, stew, beef stew, fish, soup, bread, veggies, pasta, rice. And there was quite a variety. It was well prepared. It was tasty. I was very impressed with the meals. So there times where some like, oh, this is a different vegetable, not used to seeing this. Again, they did hike in some fresh fruit and veg towards the end of the week, which was really nice. But we had more than enough. If you do have some particular allergy, would certainly let Brenda know well in advance, and she will alert the team for Festo and the cooks in preparation. For water, we were fully reliant on the Tanzania Choice team for filtering our water. There was one person, Richard, who was dedicated to filtering our water. And they had crews of people making sure that there was always water in that bucket, and Richard would be pumping it for us and filtering it for us. I did not bring iodine tablets. I did not bring my own personal filtration that I use when I'm hiking in Wyoming. We just filled up each morning, each night. Richard was there filtering the water that was available. So that was, yeah, just amazing. You can see that there was a breakdown in the costs. Is kind of getting down into the weeds of the nitty gritty, and it's more just how people fit into vehicles. A little bit extra for a single supplement. The visa is about well, it is. If you have a U.S. passport, it's $100. Every other country on the planet, it's only a $50 visa. So they know Americans have money, and they're going to ask you to pay more. I may enter Kilimanjaro using my Australian passport and save myself $50. Travel insurance, there are a couple links and suggestions on the website for you to think about, but that's recommended to be a part of that. Tips, I'm going to come back to that. Airfare from Minneapolis round trip is about $2,000, usually in that neighborhood. We'll be watching those fares, usually buying tickets within 3 to 6 months, what we recommend the trip. So the tips will come to a total of about $250 to $350 in that range. 250 is on the low end, 350 is on the high end. So the breakdown is something like this: $20 to $25 per day for the lead guide for Festo, assistant guides 15 to 20, cook 10 to 15, and if there are multiple cooks, obviously toilet 10 to attendant, porters 7 to 10 per day. We will only know the size of our crew once the size of our group is determined. But the tipping is all done in US dollars. It feels weird to have a wad of cash in your pocket as you're heading up the mountain, but that is the way that they do it. US dollars are very well received in Tanzania. This is how we worked out the high-end range in 2019. So these numbers are all dependent on 2019, based on the number of porters. We had 74, 3 cooks, 10 assistant guides, 1 lead guide. There was a little built in there for bonus tips. We spent, 2 nights at the farm to start off with, so there was a few people there to help support us. We'll create this grid in advance before leaving, so you have a clear sense of what to expect. But again, the numbers are all going to change based on how many people are in our group and how many people we need to support us getting up and down the mountain. But it's going to be in that range, 250 to 350. The breakdown of the payment schedule, I'm asking for the deposit by the end of February 28th. And this is what Tanzania Choice Safaris is asking. They need to book those hotel rooms on the beginning and the end. They need to work on any extensions if you so choose at that point as well. And Brenda has said it's non-refundable unless someone else takes your spot. Something can happen, illness, accident, death of a family member, who knows what. A host of things could impact your trip, but that's what Brenda is asking to do. The reason for getting the money initially to me via my wife, Kim, Venmo or check, if you choose to do that, is so that we will make one bank transfer in lump, and that Brenda and Tanzania Choice Safaris don't have to have credit card fees that are reducing the amount of funds that they have available to them. It just adds up in quantity. So it may feel a little bit awkward to say, hey, send me $800. That's the way it is. And hopefully you'll trust me with your deposit, and we can make that work. But if you feel uncomfortable with that, talk to me, but that's kind of where we're at. So this is a list of people who have expressed interest and said, I'm interested in the trip. So I've added their names to the interest list. And then you can see the confirmed list on the right. And I put in the email and said, you know what, I'm going to hold anyone who's on the interest list. I'm going to hold your spot to February 28th. If I haven't received your deposit at that point, I'll drop you off the list. As soon as you get your deposit in, we'll add you to the confirmed list. But that's how I'm envisioning this is going to work. So, yeah, so we'll see how the group grows and develops over time. Extensions, if you have the time, that I would strongly recommend a safari. If you've never done a safari before, that you can take a couple of days and do that. Tanzania Choice Safaris is excellent at leading safaris. Heading out west to the Ngorongoro crater is something that we've done twice, and that's been really enjoyable. This is hard to tell on the map, but I just wanted to give you a little sense of the geography of the area. So this is Mount Kilimanjaro. This is the town of Moshi. The airport's in about here. There's a town of Uswa. That's where we'll be staying at the farm, at the Shamba. We drive around to this side to begin our hike. We basically hike around the mountain and then come up the east side where everyone is summiting up that. We exit and come on down the mountain and back to the Uswa area, to the Wera River Lodge. The city of Arusha is to the west. This is the largest city. It's a city of 400,000 people with about 7 or 8 traffic lights. So that just gives you a sense of what driving is like in Arusha. I would never want to drive there. It's always good to have a driver with you. The Ngorongoro crater, in one of the better places for safari, is continuing further out to the west. So from our drive at Uswa around to the gate where we're going to be going is about 3 or 4 hours, just to give you a sense of drive time. So from Arusha heading out here, it's about 5 or 6 hours to get out to the good safari area. There's another smaller national park, Tarangire, out here. The Serengeti National Park is even a little bit further out west as you get out to the plains over here, just to give you a little bit of a sense of where you're at. But so the Ngorongoro crater is another extinct volcano, but it's just the crater, and you literally drive into this crater and there are just animals all over the place. It's just a fascinating safari experience. I think so. Yeah, so my wife and a few people are coming in on the night that we come off the mountain. We're going to go visit the pediatrician that we support in Arusha. He developed a NICU from scratch and has been doing an amazing job there. He and his family are originally from Minnesota, but we'll be spending hopefully a day with them. As we get into the spring, I'm thinking end of April, early May, that I'd like to arrange a Zoom time with Festo. I think we'll probably do it on a Saturday, just with a time change. Tanzania is about 8 hours ahead, I think, to make that fit and work into the schedule. I would love to get, so our group can have a chance to have a direct conversation with our lead guide. So that is everything that I had prepared. Ah, Betsy and Greg joined us. Sorry, I hadn't seen you pop in there. Welcome, Betsy and Greg. And Hannah jumped in here as well. Cool. And Joshua, Scott. Sorry, I hadn't visited with you guys either. Great. Okay. All right. Any other questions that you might have? And Savannah's there as well. Hey, Savannah. Boy, I must have answered all of the questions. Man, I'm good. Whew. That was brilliant. I have been recording this, so I will put this up on YouTube, and we'll send you a link to those of you who missed the beginning. And if you wanted to review any of the pieces along the way. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Yeah, any other questions? Anything else that comes to mind?
Can you send us just the PowerPoint as well?
Yeah, great idea. I will certainly do that. I can do that. I'll probably put it into a PDF and link that. But yeah, let me know if you have any questions. I'll respond, maybe not as quickly as, depends on where I am on the planet. I'm going to be heading home to Australia in 3 weeks from today. I have a couple of weeks there with my family, a couple of weeks in vacation in March. And I know Savannah's going to be in Cambodia a week from today, and other people are traveling all over the place. But I'm excited that you're thinking about the trip. If you have any other questions that you want to ask, please email me. If I don't know the answer to your question, I'll connect with Brenda, but having done this once, certainly feel like a pretty good grip on what to expect. I've led trips to Wyoming every year for the last 20 years as a part of my work here at Emmanuel. So I'm used to leading hiking groups at altitude, and I've done that quite frequently. I've done day hikes with Betsy and Greg and enjoyed their company out in Wyoming. I've done a week with Savannah out in Wyoming, and Hannah. We even hiked for a week in Wyoming in the Bighorns as well. So some of you know me already, which is good. And you can give a thumbs up or thumbs down to the rest of the group and just say, nah, he's a loser. Don't even think about it. Oh, thumbs up. Yay, good. But if any of you want to stick around and ask a few questions, but otherwise, I'm going to stop the recording at this point. And if anyone wants to stick around and field a few questions, I'll stick around for a little bit. Otherwise, let me know if you have questions. And if you're in, let's get that deposit in by the end of February, and we'll go from there. All right.
Thank you.
All
Thanks,
right.
Martin.
Have a
Thank you.
good night.